Hi, and welcome to ExploreAStory. I'm Emily Grassley, coming to you from the Field Museum in Chicago. Actually, these next two episodes were recorded in Berlin, Germany, and they're coming from you. Back in January, we took our YouTube channel, The Brain Scoop, overseas to film 3 special episodes with our friends at the Museum for Naturkunde. On our last day, we hosted a meetup at the museum and invited Brain Scoop fans and ExploreAStory listeners to join us for an afternoon at the museum. And we asked them to share their own stories about a time they had a memorable experience at a museum, in nature, or just exploring the world. Some of these stories are funny and others are reflective, but they all absolutely fill me with joy. Since we had so many people contribute, we've split this episode into 2 parts, so stay tuned for the next installment. Here we go. Can you just start by giving your name and where you're from?
My name is Lynn Matthews Anderson. I grew up in California.
And now you're here in Europe?
Yes, in Berlin.
So what is your ExploreAStory?
Well, this is probably something a lot of people can identify with. When I was very small, my first visit to a natural history museum, I was in front of some exhibit that I found utterly fascinating. So fascinated that I didn't notice my family moving on to other exhibits. And so I got lost, or at least I got left behind, and I didn't panic. I knew I was supposed to go up to a guard or something and say, I can't find my family. So they took me to this little corral where they gave me an ice cream cone while I waited for my parents to come and collect me. And my takeaway from that was that scientific curiosity is rewarding.
Ah, that's wonderful. Yay. That was great. I wish someone gave me an ice cream every time I got lost. I mean, I would have just been rolling in it by now. Great. Well, thank you so much. Hi.
Good morning.
Can you give us your name and where you're from?
My name is Verena Wigman. I'm from Darmstadt, which is close to Frankfurt.
Wow, welcome. And what is your ExploreAStory?
My ExploreAStory is not the first time I went to a natural history museum, but quite soon after. And I think I was 10 or something, and there was a shark exhibit because, sharks are cool. And I saw a diagram, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's a tooth. And then I continued looking at it, and then I read the little blurb that was underneath it, and I was like, that's the skin. And that was the moment in my mind where I realized, yes, in nature, everything is kind of connected and it's all developed simultaneously or similarly. And that was the point where I not understood, but first realized the magnificence of evolution.
It's kind of your mind blowing, like,
yes, definitely.
Shark skin is made out of teeth? It's true, it is. It's made out of the same stuff that it's amazing.
Yes, it is.
Well,
it's
wonderful.
Very, very cool.
Thank you. All right, who's next?
Yes, I'm Lina, and I am actually from here, from Berlin. I study at the university this museum belongs to.
Cool, that's wonderful. Humboldt?
Yes.
Oh, okay, neat. What is your ExploreAStory?
So when I was, I think, around 9, we went on a holiday to southern France, and there was this valley, and we went down there, and there were so many fossils around, and also like basins where there were leeches. Ooh. And then from a crack in the rocks, there was a puddle, and there were fish in there, and I was just so confused. How did all these animals get in there? Like, everything else was so dry, and it was so fascinating, and ever since then I was like obsessed with finding fossils and that kind of thing.
But what about the leeches, though?
Well, a friend showed me like what a leech even is, because we don't really have them here, or at least I've never seen one. And he was like, so if you put your finger in, and then it will come and then it will suck the blood out of it. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah! Leeches. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Hooray!
Thank you.
Leeches! We should do a video on leeches. We could get some from Lake Michigan. I could put my hand in the tank and people would be like, oh, gross, that's awesome. Sucking your blood. So can you give your name and where you're from?
Okay, my name is Andres. I come from Bolivia, from La Paz.
Wow.
But I'm living in Hamburg right now. I'm studying there. And my ExploreAStory is, I had been reading about Achilles elephants. Mm-hmm. And like how they were like really important for the history of taxidermy and so on. And I realized I had never been in the Natural History Museum of my own city in Bolivia in South America. And I read that there were like some jaguars there, like the first models in Bolivia that had been made there. So I was like really excited to go and see them. And so I went there and I like went to the exhibit and saw the jaguars, and they were ugly. They were like so ugly. I couldn't believe it. But I guess the point of these models was that they were the first models in Bolivia, so it was like a I don't know, like the starting point for a lot of the taxidermy in Bolivia, which is actually pretty okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can only go up from there.
Yeah. But I mean, they were like really funny. The faces, especially, were like.
I enjoy the bad taxidermy websites, and the iconic one that I always remember was this ocelot that has like a shriveled face and buggy eyes. So when we were planning to come here to Berlin, I was like looking at the website, and I realized that ocelot is here. You can see it. And so like I was writing the script about most important, most interesting things from the Museum for Naturkunde, and I was like, and then they have the ocelot. And the people here were kind of like, well, yeah, I guess we can put that in the video. And I'm like, yeah. So on our way out in the hall that we walked through with Knut, the polar bear, it's in that room. So you'll have to look for the case for the really derpy looking ocelot.
Cool.
And you'll be like, yeah, much improved. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So can you give your name and where you're from?
My name is Philip. I'm from Bonn, Germany.
Wonderful.
And my story takes place in my neighborhood where there's a fox. So late at night, you think you're seeing a weird-looking dog, but it's actually a fox, and it's always very calm. And I like that in this wasteland of concrete, which is Berlin, you can still find nature.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
What a nice sentiment. Ah, that's neat. Speaking of nature in Berlin, speaking of nature in Berlin, there's a brand new program that they're starting here. I can't remember the German word for it, but it's about the nightingales that come in. So they're starting to do a citizen science project, because about every year in the springtime, about 4,000 nightingales migrate from Africa, and they take up residency here in Berlin, in some of the parks and in people's backyards. And so there's a citizen science project. If you hear a nightingale calling, they want you to record it and then submit your information where you were in the city when you heard it. So they'll compile the data points of like where these nightingales are going and what they're doing in the 6 weeks that they're here in the spring. So stay tuned. I think they have a link on the website. Maybe not. But there's one. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I was told that I should pass that information along for people in Berlin who want to get involved with the museum. It's great, the Nightingale Project. I know someone who set up a tent in their backyard all night to listen to it. It was pretty great. Cool, who's next?
Hi, my name's Tilman. I'm from here in Berlin, and my Explorer story is that when I was in 5th grade, we went to a museum called the Spectrum here in Berlin, and it has a lot of like do-it-yourself and like hands-on exhibits. And once we were through the museum, I didn't want to go home and I wanted to do it all over again. So I had my teacher call my mom at work to get her permission that I could stay in the museum on my own to do the whole thing again. And everything went out.
That's amazing. Have you been back since?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
A couple of times.
So has it like held up or, you know?
Yeah, they have this really cool thing where you sit on a bench that's like inside like a witch's hut. And then they start rotating the witch's hut around you.
What?
But you get super dizzy because your brain gets confused and you think that you're rotating. And like in front of every single seat there's a button you can push in case you get nauseous because it works that well. It's creepy. And we had a couple of students in my class who couldn't do it.
Oh my gosh.
Like they had to get out.
That doesn't sound like a place you would go after one of these 24-hour nightclubs in Berlin. I think you already get that simulated experience leaving.
I wouldn't know.
I don't know. I want to go there. Witch's Hut.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know if they still have that. It's been a while, but I hope they do because it's really fun.
That's neat. Well, thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Tomke. I'm originally from Bremen, but now I study here. So my Explorer story takes place quite a bit later than most. When I was finished, like when I did my final for high school, as kind of a reward, I went through Europe on my own, like on a round trip, and I went to Lisbon. And like since I was completely on my own, I was freaking terrified, so I didn't really know what to do. Like most of the time, I'd just be at my hotel and like, oh God, I don't know. But thanks to the expo in Lisbon, there's this huge oceanarium. And like it's the biggest in Europe, and I've always been fascinated with that. So I was like, okay, I got to do something. I kind of spent that amount of money and not been there. So I went and I spent like 6 or 7 hours there just walking around again and again and just looking at everything. And after that, I was a little calmer and I kind of managed to, go on and not be scared all the time.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's great that museums can help you overcome anxiety. I know when I'm in a new city, I'm like, I'll just sit in my hotel room and order a room service because I don't understand the train system here. But
oh yes, I just walked everywhere.
Yeah, but that's wonderful that you can break out of your shell, enjoy a museum. I think museums are some of the best places to visit on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's me, the nerd, walking around a museum by myself.
Yeah, pretty much. I can relate to that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm good. I also have a loud voice, so I'll stand back.
Okay.
My name is Tracy. I live in Berlin via Salt Lake City and DC.
Oh, great.
So my story is about, I grew up in DC, and I always used to go to the Natural History Museum of the Smithsonian. And so I grew up thinking that museums were free. And because all the museums are free at the Smithsonian. And so the first time I went up to New York and I went to the Natural History Museum there, I started to just walk right in. And someone was like, do you have a ticket? And I was like, what? Museums are free. So that was kind of an eye-opening experience.
Oh, yeah.
No other museums have been free since then.
No, sorry about that. Well, at least in the United States, we don't subsidize most of our museums. So, but it was, I kind of, to the reverse story for me was like, I grew up in South Dakota and we don't have a natural history museum. So I didn't know what to expect. So I went to the Smithsonian for the first time when I was in high school, and I wandered in, spent like 10 minutes looking for the ticket counter and getting frustrated. I was like, I just want to go into the museum, and it's so not clear where I buy my ticket. And then I went up to a security guard, and they're like, you just walk in. And that blew my mind, because I was like, what, you just walk in? And then they had this like gigantic elephant in the atrium, and that's my first like experience in a natural history museum, because I was like, is that real? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, everything is dead, so yeah, but that's great. I mean, good. Yeah, I guess I'm sorry more museums aren't free, but if I could control things, museums for everybody. I don't know. Anyway, well, thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was nice meeting you.
It's nice meeting you too. I was really excited too when I told the staff at the museum here I wanted to do a meetup, and they could, if there was a website that I could direct people to buy their tickets, and they're like, oh, we'll just give everybody, they can just come in for free for the day. And I was like, that's so awesome.
Under 18, all the state-owned museums in Berlin are for free.
Yeah, well, that was kind of mind-blowing for us from the United States. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So my name's Whitney, I'm from Kentucky.
Okay.
So my science-related story is I work as a microbiology researcher here, and I work with bacteria that's the closest relative to plague.
What?
Yeah, but this one just causes gastroenteritis.
Oh.
So you basically just feel really bad for a couple days.
Oh, okay.
But it split only 2,000 years ago, so not so long ago. But I had some students coming into the lab, and they were working with me. And when we put cultures into the incubator, you have to sign them in. What is it? How much you have? So I didn't check them, but they were signing in cultures for a couple days, and they were signing it in as Yersinia pestis, which is the plague bacteria. And we're not allowed to work with the plague. So our colleagues come in and start checking the book, and it says pestis on here, and everyone's freaking out. I was like, who is working with pestis? Like, have we all been exposed to Black Plague? And then we realized that the students got pseudotuberculosis, Yersinia pseudotuberculosis confused with Yersinia pestis. And so they'd just been writing down the wrong thing for like 3 days while we were all trying to figure out if we had actually been exposed to plague.
That's terrifying. Like, what mentally went through your head when you did you go home at the end of the day and someone's like, hey, how was your day? And you're like, it's okay. I might have the plague. We probably shouldn't be hanging out.
No. It didn't take that long. We narrowed it down within like an hour or so.
Oh, good.
But at that time, it was just trying to think who in the campus has plague, because we couldn't think of anyone. Like, how did you come up with plague?
Yeah,
so
it's not something you just kind of happen upon.
You don't have it just sitting there.
Like,
so.
oh, I've got my apartment's full of rats. They
Yeah,
just with the plague, we just chill. I don't know.
So,
that's terrifying.
But yeah, the whole story is all about you should take really good notes, really accurate notes, any type of science. So
good. Yeah. Good moral to this story.
Yeah.
Also, I'm glad you don't have the plague.
I'm glad too.
So my name is David. I'm from California. I work here in Berlin, so I'm here visiting the company I work for. So my story, so when I was in college, I took one of those classic road trips by myself across the U.S. And on the way, I decided to stop and hike in the Grand Tetons by myself, which maybe wasn't so smart.
Sounds a little dangerous.
Yeah, so anyway, I was approaching this meadow, and as I entered the meadow, I looked across to the other end, and there was some sort of wild cat, which wasn't that big. I think it was a bobcat, but I just really I connected with it. It must have heard me enter the meadow, and it turned and looked at me, and I looked at it, and we just had that moment of seeing each other, which was really intense, and then I went away, and it did too.
That's an amazing interaction, though. Something that, might have only lasted a couple of seconds, but you've remembered it for your entire life.
Exactly.
I had an interaction with a bobcat when I was in elementary school, because my family grew up in South Dakota, up in the Black Hills, and there was one Saturday morning I was eating cereal and kind of staring off into the backyard, and from the top of the hill, I see this bobcat start walking toward our backyard, and it comes into our backyard and down our retaining wall and to our patio furniture, which is right outside the window I was looking at, and it looked at me, and we made eye contact as well, and then it lifted up its leg and peed on all of our patio furniture. And then my house cat came out and was staring at it, and that's when they kind of stared at one another a little bit and bristled, and then he just walked off. So yeah, and then my mom came home and I said, Mom, we should probably wash the patio furniture, and she said, why? I was like, oh, bobcat came and peed on all of it. She was like, that's pretty neat. I'm like, yeah? That's great. I'm glad we have a shared bobcat story. Wonderful, thank you. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Good. So what's your, can you give your name and where you're from?
Yeah, my name is Kieran, and I study chemistry at the University of Aarhus in Denmark. And one morning when I was walking to class, sometimes I walk past the Natural History Museum on campus at the university, and I walk around the corner, and all of a sudden there's a tiger right in front of me.
What?
And I hadn't had my coffee yet, so it took a couple of seconds before I noticed that it wasn't alive.
That's some pretty convincing taxidermy.
Yeah.
Was it behind glass?
No, it was in the parking lot. I think they were changing the exhibit.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I was imagining you were in the museum, and I'm like, that's not that surprising.
I was in the parking lot.
That would be a shocking thing to see in a parking lot in Europe. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I'd probably also be terrified, especially if it was pre-coffee.
Yeah.
Kind of a rude awakening a little bit. That's hilarious. Thank you for sharing. That's kind of the fun part about museums too, is that, we've had a couple of these of talking about interesting day-to-day things that you do, what'd you do today? Oh, I impersonated a T-Rex on TV, or, I loaded up a tiger into the back of a semi-truck. When you work at a museum, natural history museum, it seems, day-to-day kind of job, but when you're not expecting it, it is quite surreal. But that's what makes it interesting.
I'm Lotte. I'm originally from Hamburg, but I live here now, and it's just I just wanted to talk about the Zoological Museum in Hamburg, because that's part of the university, and it is free. Good. Which is nice. So we used to go there all the time in kindergarten. It was one of the 3 or 4 spots that they would take us to in kindergarten. So I've been going there since I was 3 or 4 years old, and I still go there. When I have visitors to Hamburg, it's one spot where I like to take people, because it is free, and they have a bunch of stuffed animals.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
That's it.
Yeah. I also take people to natural history museums wherever I go. Clearly, I would show up in Berlin, and I'm like, hey, everybody, let's go hang out at the Natural History Museum. We've been working a lot this week and doing filming and stuff with really long days, and some of the staff who was helping us, they were like, you should really just take an afternoon off. But I was like, but I get to interview a guy about his audio animal recording library. Why? What else? There's nothing more interesting to me to do in Berlin than talk to this guy about his amazing audio sound library here in the museum.
Okay, so my name is Laura, and I'm from Berlin. And my explorer story is that for my final project in high school, me and my best friend got assigned to redesign the minerals collection at our high school. So we spent about a semester digging really into the subject, and it wasn't really something I've ever been interested before. So I did it a little bit grudgingly. And 6 months after we finished it, and I put so much time into that and learned so much new stuff, my family went to Vienna. And the Natural History Museum there has a huge mineral collection, like rooms full of it. And I spent hours and hours there just looking at all the rocks and taking pictures and sending them to my best friend who did that project with me. And my family got a little fed up and moved on without me, because they were like, since when are you interested in rocks? And I guess the moral of the story is that something that you never would have thought would interest you, if you just put some time into it, research it, is just a fascinating subject and the most interesting thing in the world.
That's what I like about, learning and science and understanding the natural world is you might pick up pieces of information like, oh, I kind of know what that bird is or that animal or that mineral, and then when you're out in the world and you encounter it, it's all of a sudden like a little light bulb goes off and you're like, wait, yeah, I know about the nightingales. I know that 4,000 of them migrate to Berlin every year from Africa. That's pretty neat. Like, where are they going? What are they doing? I don't know, but I know what they're, why they're here for a while. It's like meeting a friend, or like you see a mineral in another museum and you're like, I know some information about this thing. Yeah. That's pretty neat. That's why I like doing this. That's great. Well, I'm glad that you could have a nice interaction with minerals.
Thank you.
That pun is funnier if you see it written out, but that rocks. No, I'm stopping. Just cut me off.
Thanks so much for filming the intro with me.
Yeah, no problem. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. So I'm Benedict, also from Berlin, and my explorer story takes place in Austria, I think it was. I went hiking with my mom there, and then in the forest suddenly I saw a very big brown thing vanishing into the forest. And we was like, okay, there are no bears here, right? So we just went on hiking, and then when we were back into the hotel, we read in the newspaper that there are now bears living here again. So that was terrifying and fascinating at the same time, but I think more fascinating, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you had known there were bears, you could probably prepare for that. But they're not you're not assuming that there are bears.
Yeah, and because of that, we actually just walked right into the direction where we saw that brown thing disappear.
Whoop! Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm kind of grateful your story isn't a little more exciting.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad bears are coming back. We need more bears.
Yeah.
Yeah, bears. Yeah, bears. Yeah, bears. Okay. The title of this podcast will now be Yeah, Bears. The Berlin Explorer Story Experience. Hello.
Hi. My name is Lisanne. I'm from the Netherlands, but now I live and work in Berlin.
Great.
And a couple of years ago, I got approached from an ex-classmate at a social network site, and she told me, like, I can still remember during primary school that the teacher, he was talking to you and was saying, like, Lisanne, are the birds on the fence outside really that much interesting than what I have to say? And yeah, that was kind of true, because now 20 years later I study animal behavior as a profession. I'm a biologist, so.
That's amazing. So he was kind of being like, you should be paying more attention in class or whatever, because you're like wistfully looking outside the window. That would have been me, though. We would have been friends.
Yeah.
And we also would have been written up as being disruptive, because we would have been like, what are the birds doing? Like, check that one out.
Yeah, it's way more interesting.
Yeah. So what kind of animal behavior work do you research now?
I study social networks and animal personality.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Which animal has the best personality?
Well, I did my PhD on grey tits, so I have to say grey tits.
On grey tits?
Yeah.
The little birds?
Yeah, you can hear them outside now the whole day. They're really cool. They're very, very aggressive little birds.
Yeah. Tiny bird, but big personality.
Yeah, very big personality.
That's great. Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Amy from Chicago.
Oh, what? Amy from Chicago? Yeah. Why did you come all the way to Berlin to meet me?
Well, I grew up in Chicago and did my undergrad in Boston, and now I'm doing my master's here in Potsdam, which is like just outside of Berlin.
Cool.
So I live in Berlin now, which is exciting. And so I was like, wow, finally get to meet Emily on the other side of the world. But yeah, so my Explore stories, I grew up in Chicago, so all of my like early memories are at the Chicago museums. And in the museum of science industry one time, they had sort of a interactive thing where the kids can come up and do a science project right there. And so I did that, and what happened was I spit in a tube and they made my DNA for me. Like my own personal DNA, and I was so like just blown away by this little tube of DNA. I kept it and held it like for years and years. I don't know what happened to it now, but now I am like doing work with plant DNA. Like I'm extracting DNA like every day. So it totally, I study biology. So it's kind of a full circle thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice you get to have an interaction. And so many of you are sharing stories, which I love, about an interaction you had in a museum that helped like shape your direction for what you're doing today. It's like, go museums. Woo. Yeah. Yeah, museums.
Yeah, museums.
Yeah,
totally.
fairs. Yeah, museums.
Okay.
I mean, you're carrying your own DNA around all day anyway.
This is true.
Even if you lost it, I mean, it's still here. Here it is. I'm still excited. I'm officially a part of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Yeah, my DNA. They have that in their collection. Hi.
Hello, I'm Gregor. I'm from Berlin, but my story is about growing up in the Ruhr area, which is like the coal and steel area.
Okay.
So at the age of, I don't know really anymore, 13 years perhaps, I was looking for the mythical nature outside of TV. Mm-hmm. And I first set on fossils, which turned out to be not a very good choice because there aren't any fossils anywhere,
no.
which nobody told me. So I was a bit frustrated, and I came to the conclusion, well, maybe there isn't any nature here. And a bit later, when I was involved with the Nature Conservancy organization, Naturkunde, what is it? Damals it was called Deutscher Bund für Vogelschutz at that time.
I'll remember that.
But it's called NABU now. Then I started we were starting to identify plants, and it was quite fascinating. And this is the story I want to share. I suddenly detected that there is a lot of nature once you get down. Where there used to be just a green lawn or a side besides the street, suddenly there was a collection of 20, 30 species. There were things there. There were things I could connect with, natural things I could connect with. But the story I take away from that is that you have to give the things you relate with a name. If it's just an anonymous colored mass, you can't really relate to them. Yeah. I mean, it's the same like when I look at you. You're a mass, you're a crowd. But once I know names out of you, it's a totally different thing. Yeah. And I think that's very important. What we have to do with nature, we have to relate, to love them. We also have to know their names.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, taxonomists. Yeah.
Yeah, but modern ones.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, my name is Corinna. I'm from Hamburg, Germany. And my story is about when I finished school. I went to Vienna to visit a friend. And we went to the Museum of Natural History because I really wanted to see dinosaurs. Because I really like them and they're huge. And I didn't see any in Hamburg. So, Vienna it was. And they were nice and huge and interesting. And there was one bone, I think it was about like a sauropod. I don't know which one, but you could touch it. It was a fossilized dinosaur bone, and I was standing there, slapping it, touching it, grinning like an idiot. I'm touching a dinosaur. And I was so happy. I think I made it my Facebook profile picture for like a year or something. Just me standing there, dinosaur, my dinosaur.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I really like that bone. I hope it's still there and not touched to death.
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure you could go back and slap it again.
It was very soft and nice and old and withered.
Yeah.
It was a good bone.
Good. It was a good bone. I'm sure if that sauropod were around today, you would be so happy to know that it had such a good bone in its body.
Or at least the fossilized remains of whatever.
Yeah, that's really neat. Cool, thank you. Okay. I really love this dreamy music that just kind of started. That's nice. Aw, so sleepy. Anyway, okay, aside, yes, hello.
So,
we're back.
hi, I'm Eliane, and I am Swiss actually, and I want to tell you how I ended up working in a natural history museum.
Okay.
So it all started when I was studying. I did an internship in a nature museum, which was a very tiny museum, and I got really hooked about working in a museum. And I finished my studies, and then I ended in Mauritius, working with critically endangered birds, with Mauritius Fodies and olive white eyes, which was really fascinating. So, and I also worked with loggerhead turtles, which are also endangered. And then I decided to do a PhD, and I'm very fascinated about actually disease ecology and also about chytromycosis, which is a deadly disease for frogs.
Wow.
Which is really, really bad at the moment, because almost if this species is susceptible to this disease, almost all the individuals are going to die. And for example, the golden frog from Panama is already lost. So, yeah. So, but I did not do my PhD with chytromycosis. I just worked with fire salamander, and I did a lot of field work in Israel. And there I had a good experience working in the desert. And then I was looking for a job. I'm working in Braunschweig now. And my museum had a position which was a collaboration between a refugee and a scientist. And we are preparing an exhibition about the nature of the countries where the refugees are coming from.
Wow.
So this is a really amazing project which my director had in his mind, and he wanted to show the people that these countries are really, really beautiful, but on the other hand also that war is really devastating for wildlife in these countries, and that a lot of the nature conservation projects are just not funded anymore, and there's a lot of problems. So we are preparing this exhibition now, and so hopefully next summer we are going to open our new exhibition. And I'm doing this project with the refugee from Syria.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's really wonderful. Where was the museum again? Where they can go?
It's in Braunschweig.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if anybody here a year from now is in that area, they should go. That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it is.
Cool.
It's
Wonderful.
really nice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yay. Hi.
Hi. I'm Tabia. I'm from Berlin. And my Explore story is that I was at the planetarium yesterday, listening to an audiobook actually, but I remembered that when I was a kid and I was camping in Denmark and in the planetarium, I always was afraid that the sky would fall on me. Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch Star Wars or space movies. I still have a hard time watching them. There's something about once they're in the spaceship and the planet is like so big, I feel like I'm gonna get sucked into space.
The depth is amazing.
Yeah. No, I didn't watch Star Wars until I was like in college because I was too afraid. Or if I would watch it and I'd cover my eyes in the space parts. I still don't like thinking about it. People are like, you should do videos on space stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't. Brandon's like, yeah, space stuff. I'm like, God, it's so scary. We don't even know what mites live in the dirt here. Why can't we just focus on like the dirt, my feet on the ground, and nothing to space? But we'll do space video, Brandon. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
One. And then
Thank
I'm
you.
supposed to say hi from a friend from Italy, but she's studying there. But she introduced me to you, and she was like, "I want to go," but she's in Italy, so.
Okay. Hi to your friend from Italy.
and
so much table. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. We should have had a brain scoop mug or something. Well, if we hadn't just planned this idea at 4 p.m. yesterday, we could have. We were like, what are we going to do?
Hi, I'm Sasha. I'm from a very small village in the middle of Germany, moved to Berlin 10 years ago. I studied physics. My story is a little bit about physics, but also about exploring. I have a friend in Chicago who I visited more than 10 years ago. And close to Chicago, is the big Tevatron, the biggest electron collider in the world. And problem with such sites is they are far away. It's not so easy to reach them by public transport, and there's like special opening times, and you have to pre-register, etc., etc., etc. But I said, hey, just let's go there, and we took the earliest train because there's only like 2 trains going there per day, and we ended up in Batavia, a very small village in the outskirts, and we had no idea how to reach that actually site. And I went outside of the train building, and next to that is a big sign that says Batavia is partner cities with, etc., etc., etc. Taufkirchen. And I said to my friend in German, wo zur Hölle liegt denn Taufkirchen? Because I knew he doesn't understand German. He has no idea where the small village is. And the girl next to me, coming out of the building, says, "Oh, I'm from Taufkirchen." I was like, "What's that now? A joke?" And then we talked a little bit, and I was, "Hey, I wanted to visit this particle accelerator next to here, but we have no idea. It's like 10 kilometers away." And she said, "Oh, I'm gonna picked up by a friend in 5 minutes. I will just ask him if he can give you a ride." Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the way we got there. Yeah. Otherwise, because there's only one bus going there once per day, it would be impossible to reach that. Otherwise, that it's been guarded by the army because it's one of the most hazardous places in the US that might be susceptible to bombings and terrorism and stuff like that. So it's not so easy to actually get there. But the takeaway is, don't feel blocked by obstacles like opening times, etc. Just go and explore. You will reach things.
Well, I mean, I might pay attention to the opening times, because you show up in the middle of the night and you're like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm just a nerd." They might be.
I just want to see it. And then you get picked up by the army. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the army comes, and then there's a lot of paperwork with getting arrested, I've heard.
Yeah.
So, but what a small world, though. You go all the way over there, and then there's someone who's from that same area.
Exactly, and actually only because of that person I might have reached that place and had a nice day there.
Aw, strangers can be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of ExploreAStory. You can always shoot us an email with feedback at ExploreAStory@fieldmuseum.org, and keep submitting your environmental sounds. It's so fun to hear where you are in the world. Anyway, you can keep looking forward to a new episode every other week in the iTunes Store, on our website, ExploreAStory.com, it's all one word, where most places where podcasts can be found, and on YouTube at youtube.com/thebrainscoop. ExploreAStory is hosted by me, Emily Grassley. Our guests today were from all over the world, so thanks to those of you who shared your story. The show is produced by Brandon Brungard and Sherry Arasan with music from Jason Widener and is made possible with support from the Field Museum in Chicago, Illinois.